this billionaire walked into court completely relaxed. Designer suit, polished smile, cameras flashing around him like he had already won. But less than 4 hours later, the same man was gripping the defense table with shaking hands. After one unexpected witness said a single sentence that changed everything. The courtroom in downtown Chicago was already packed before sunrise. Reporters lined the hallway, content creators whispered into microphones, even people with no connection to the case stood outside the courthouse hoping to get a seat inside. Because this wasn't just another lawsuit, this was David versus Goliath, a tiny family-owned bakery against one of the most powerful real estate billionaires in America. And at first glance, the outcome looked painfully obvious. On one side sat Leonard Voss, a man worth nearly $11 billion, founder of the massive development company Voss Urban Holdings, a businessman famous for luxury skyscrapers, ruthless negotiations, and a terrifying reputation in court. People online called him the smiling executioner, not because he yelled, not because he threatened people publicly, but because witnesses said he stayed calm while destroying lives. That detail matters, because psychologically, the most dangerous people in high-stakes environments are often the quietest ones. They don't explode emotionally. They calculate, and Leonard Voss was known for calculation. Across the courtroom sat the Moreno family, no bodyguards, no expensive lawyers, no cameras following them. Just 3 exhausted people holding on to a business that had belonged to their family for 42 years. Moreno Family Bakery, a small neighborhood bakery tucked between old brick buildings on the west side of Chicago. It wasn't famous. It wasn't trendy. But for decades, people in that neighborhood celebrated birthdays there. First dates happened there. Children grew up eating the same cinnamon rolls their parents once ate. Places like that become more than businesses. They become emotional landmarks. And that's exactly why this case exploded online, because according to the lawsuit, Leonard Voss intentionally destroyed that bakery to force the family off their property, not legally, not directly, but strategically, slowly, methodically, like a game of chess. The allegations sounded unbelievable at first. The Moreno family claimed that after refusing to sell their property to Voss Urban Holdings, strange things started happening. Construction barriers suddenly blocked access to the bakery entrance, parking disappeared overnight. Water pipes beneath the street were accidentally damaged 3 separate times. Noise from nearby demolition projects started before dawn every morning, and somehow, every neighboring business accepted buyout offers except them. Now, here's where things get disturbing. None of those actions alone were technically illegal. That's important, because powerful corporations rarely destroy people with one dramatic action. They do it through pressure, inconvenience, delay, isolation, 1,000 tiny cuts, and psychologically, that kind of pressure breaks people faster than open aggression. The Moreno family said their monthly revenue dropped nearly 70% in less than a year. Employees quit. Customers stopped coming. Bills piled up. Then came the final blow. The city declared the building unsafe after an inspection connected to nearby construction vibrations. The bakery was forced to close temporarily. Temporary closures kill small businesses, especially family-owned ones operating month to month. And Leonard Voss? He made an offer to buy the property less than 48 hours later. That timing became the center of the entire trial, because the billionaire's legal team insisted it was coincidence. But the internet? The internet didn't believe coincidence for 1 second. By the time the trial began, millions of people were already emotionally invested. And Leonard Voss hated that, not because he feared public opinion, because men like him usually control the narrative, but this time, he couldn't. The prosecutor, Vanessa Reed, understood that immediately. Vanessa Reed wasn't loud or theatrical. She was precise, cold Papin, the kind of attorney who lets silence make people uncomfortable. And the moment she stood up for opening statements, the atmosphere changed. "You will hear," she told the jury calmly, "that this was not business competition." She paused. "You will hear evidence of intentional economic suffocation." The courtroom went silent. Notice that phrase, economic suffocation. That wasn't accidental wording. The prosecutor was reframing the entire case psychologically, not as a property dispute, not as business strategy, but as controlled destruction. And juries respond emotionally to language like that, especially when the victim is a family business. Then Vanessa Reed did something brilliant. She pointed directly at the Moreno family. Maria Moreno sat between her husband Daniel and their daughter Sophia. All three looked exhausted, not polished, not media-trained. Real and authenticity is powerful in court, especially against billionaire perfection. These people, Vanessa said softly, spent 42 years building something for their community. Then she turned toward Leonard Voss. He spent 11 months trying to erase it. You could actually hear whispers spread across the courtroom. Even some reporters looked up from their laptops. Because suddenly, this wasn't about contracts anymore. It felt personal. Leonard Voss never reacted. Not even slightly. And honestly, that may have hurt him more, because juries study behavior constantly. A total lack of emotional response during accusations of ruining a family can appear cold, even if legally irrelevant. And here's another psychological detail most people miss. Powerful defendants often rely on appearing untouchable, confident, above the chaos. But if the jury begins interpreting that confidence as arrogance, everything shifts. The defense attorney, Richard Hale, tried to regain control immediately. Richard Hale stood smoothly and addressed the jury with almost surgical calmness. My client built jobs, housing, infrastructure. He walked slowly across the courtroom. He followed every law. Then came the key line. The Moreno family's business failed because the neighborhood changed. That statement hit the courtroom like ice water, because, whether true or not, emotionally it sounded brutal, and Vanessa Reed knew it. You could see it in her expression. She didn't interrupt. She didn't object. She simply wrote something down. That's another courtroom tactic viewers rarely notice. Sometimes prosecutors allow emotionally damaging statements because they know the jury will remember them negatively later. And then, something happened that nobody expected. Maria Moreno began crying silently at the plaintiff's table. Not dramatic crying, not television crying. Quiet, trying desperately not to break down in public. And the jury noticed immediately, especially juror number 6, middle-aged former small business owner. He stopped taking notes entirely. That moment mattered more than most people realized, because trials are not won only with facts. They're won with emotional alignment. And right there, the emotional gravity inside that courtroom started shifting away from the billionaire. But Leonard Voss still looked calm. Too calm, almost amused, as if he knew something nobody else did. And honestly, that expression would later terrify people watching the trial online, because by the end of day 1, internet detectives began uncovering old allegations connected to Voss Urban Holdings, dyed neighborhoods, luxurious acquisitions, sudden inspections targeting holdout businesses. Nothing proven, but enough to raise questions. Questions the jury wasn't allowed to hear. Yet somehow, the tension inside the courtroom kept growing anyway, almost like everyone could sense there was something bigger hiding underneath the surface. And then, just before court adjourned for the day, Vanessa Reed announced the name of a surprise witness, a witness the defense clearly did not expect. For the first time all day, Leonard Voss stopped smiling, and when he heard the name, the color drained from his face. The next morning, people started lining up outside the courthouse before dawn, not because of the legal arguments, not because of the billionaire, but because of one question spreading across social media overnight. Who was the mystery witness that made Leonard Voss panic? By 7:15 a.m., clips from day 1 had already gone viral. Thousands of viewers replayed the exact moment Vanessa Reed announced the witness name. Not because the microphone caught the words clearly, it didn't, but because cameras captured Leonard Voss's reaction. And that reaction didn't fit the image he had built for years. The man known for emotional control looked afraid, real, and psychologically, fear from powerful people creates fascination, because the public assumes wealthy, influential figures are untouchable. So when someone like Leonard Voss suddenly loses composure, people instinctively ask the same thing. What does he know that we don't? Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere felt completely different from the previous day. Tighter, heavier. Even the defense team looked unsettled. Richard Hale entered carrying 3 thick binders under his arm, whispering aggressively to his assistants. Meanwhile, Leonard Voss sat unusually still at the defense table, no relaxed smile, no casual confidence, just silence. And that silence? It became more suspicious than any argument the prosecutor had made so far, because confident people usually project calm naturally, but forced calm? People can feel the difference. The Moreno family noticed it too. Daniel Moreno leaned slightly toward his wife. "You see him?" he whispered. Maria nodded nervously. For months, maybe years, they had viewed Leonard Voss as this unstoppable machine, a man too powerful to challenge. But now, something had cracked, and that changes victims psychologically. The moment someone terrifying finally looks vulnerable, fear starts turning into anger. Court resumed at exactly 9 a.m. Judge Eleanor Whitmore entered the room with her usual composed expression. Eleanor Whitmore was respected for one reason above all others: she hated theatrics, which made this trial especially difficult because every single moment felt theatrical: the media attention, the billionaire, the crying family, the online outrage. The judge understood something dangerous was happening outside the courtroom. Public opinion was turning the case into a symbol, and symbolic trials become unpredictable. Vanessa Reed stood first. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "the plaintiff calls Sophia Moreno." A few reporters looked surprised. Not the mystery witness, not yet. And that was deliberate, because experienced prosecutors understand pacing. You don't reveal your strongest weapon immediately. You build pressure first. Sophia Moreno walked toward the witness stand looking visibly nervous. 26 years old, dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling slightly, but determined. The jury watched her carefully, especially because, unlike her parents, Sophia represented the future of the bakery, or what was left of it. Vanessa approached gently. "Sophia, can you explain what the bakery meant to your family?" Simple question, but strategically powerful, because before presenting damage, prosecutors often establish emotional value. And Sophia answered exactly the way Vanessa hoped she would. "My grandfather opened it after immigrating here with almost nothing." Her voice cracked immediately. He used to sleep on flour sacks in the back room because he couldn't afford an apartment. The courtroom stayed completely silent. He believed if people felt welcome, they'd come back. She smiled faintly through tears, and they did. Notice what's happening psychologically. The prosecutor wasn't just building sympathy. She was creating contrast. Immigrant grandfather, family sacrifice, community love, against a billionaire developer accused of destroying it all. Jurors naturally organized stories into moral frameworks: heroes, villains, victims, and Vanessa Reed was shaping those roles carefully. Then came the shift. "Sophia," Vanessa asked softly, "when did things begin changing?" The smile disappeared instantly. "That's when the construction started." She explained how nearby streets suddenly closed, how elderly customers stopped visiting because sidewalks became inaccessible, how delivery trucks couldn't park, how the bakery lost morning business because jackhammers started before sunrise. Then she described the inspections: multiple surprise visits, repeated citations, tiny violations that suddenly became emergencies. And here's the disturbing part: everything sounded technically explainable. Individually, that's what made the case so complicated, because sophisticated intimidation rarely leaves obvious fingerprints. It hides behind procedures, policies, regulations. Sophia then revealed something that changed the room completely. 3 former employees had quit after receiving anonymous warnings that the bakery would be gone soon anyway. Vanessa paused. Did they say who gave those warnings? No. Did they describe anyone? Sophia hesitated, then looked directly at Leonard Voss. They said the men worked construction for one of his development sites. The defense objected immediately. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Whitmore said sharply. But the damage was already done. The jury heard it. And emotionally, people remember accusations even after objections erase them legally. Richard Hale rose for cross-examination with absolute precision. This was the moment the defense needed, because emotional testimony can be dismantled if the witness appears inconsistent. And Hale was extremely good at that. He approached Sophia slowly. "Miss Moreno, your business revenue was declining before any construction began, correct?" Sophia hesitated. "Some months were slower. Please answer directly." "Yes." Hale nodded calmly. "And online reviews for the bakery had also declined?" "A few." "A few?" He lifted a document. 23 negative reviews in 14 months. Vanessa Reed watched carefully but didn't interrupt because she understood the tactic. Richard Hale wasn't attacking Sophia aggressively. That would alienate the jury. Instead, he was reframing the bakery's decline as inevitable, organic, unrelated to Leonard Voss, and honestly, for the first time in the trial, the defense gained momentum. Hale continued. "You testified your business suffered from construction barriers." "Yes, but construction projects require barriers for public safety, correct?" Yes, and city inspections are conducted independently, I guess. Not by my client? Silence. Sophia looked trapped, and here's where courtroom psychology becomes brutal. Truth alone is often not enough. People must explain the truth clearly under pressure. And nervous witnesses can accidentally weaken valid arguments. Hale stepped closer. Miss Marino, isn't it true your family refused 3 separate purchase offers substantially above market value? Yes, so despite financial difficulties, your family voluntarily chose not to sell? Sophia looked frustrated now. Because it was our home. Hale nodded slowly. But legally speaking, my client offered help, didn't he? That line changed the energy again, because suddenly, Leonard Voss no longer sounded like a destroyer. He sounded like a businessman trying to buy property, and that distinction mattered enormously. Vanessa Reed finally stood. Objection. Mischaracterization. Sustained. But again, jury had heard it. At this point, the courtroom felt divided. Some jurors appeared emotionally connected to the Moreno family. Others seemed uncertain whether the prosecution could actually prove intent. And intent was everything. Without proving deliberate targeting, case could collapse entirely. Then something strange happened. While Richard Hale returned to the defense table, Vanessa Reed noticed Leonard Voss whispering aggressively to one of his assistants. Not unusual by itself. Except for one detail, the assistant looked terrified, actually terrified, eyes wide, hands shaking, and Leonard Voss kept repeating the same sentence, over and over. Vanessa couldn't hear it clearly. But the courtroom sketch artist sitting nearby later told reporters she caught part of it. She can't testify. That sentence exploded online within hours, because now everyone wanted to know the same thing. Who was she? And why was Leonard Voss so desperate to stop her? But here's where things became truly unsettling. Around noon, Judge Whitmore announced a short recess. The jury exited, reporters flooded into the hallway. And then, a court officer hurried toward the judge with visible urgency. He whispered something into her ear. Her expression changed immediately, not dramatic, not shocked, worse, concerned, deep concern. She looked directly at Vanessa Reed, then toward the defense table. Then she quietly ordered both legal teams into her chambers. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Nobody knew what was happening, but everyone felt it. Something had gone wrong behind the scenes, something serious. And when Leonard Voss stood up to leave for chambers, for the first time since the trial began, people noticed sweat running down his neck. By the time the courtroom doors reopened 40 minutes later, tension had become unbearable. Reporters stood on benches trying to see inside. Court officers barked warnings at the crowd, even veteran journalists. People who had covered murder trials and political corruption cases looked genuinely unsettled, because rumors were spreading everywhere. Some claimed a witness had disappeared. Others said evidence had been tampered with. One livestream creator even whispered that federal investigators had entered the courthouse through a private entrance. Nobody knew what was true, but everyone could feel the atmosphere changing, and in high-profile trials, atmosphere matters. Sometimes more than facts. Judge Eleanor Whitmore returned first. Her face looked colder than before, controlled, rigid. The kind of expression judges use when they are trying not to reveal anger publicly. Behind her came Vanessa Reed carrying a thin black folder. No smile, no eye contact with the media. Then Leonard Voss entered, and the entire room reacted instantly. Because he no longer looked like the same man from day one, the confidence was fading. Tiny signs at first. Tight jaw, faster breathing, eyes scanning constantly. Now, most people never notice these details. But behavior under pressure tells stories words cannot. Confident people look outward. Threatened people monitor the room. And Leonard Voss was monitoring everything. Vanessa Reed stood slowly. Your Honor, she said carefully. The plaintiff would like to call its next witness. Richard Hale immediately rose. The defense renews its objection regarding admissibility. Notice that wording, not credibility, not relevance, admissibility. That meant the defense was trying to stop the jury from hearing something entirely. And jurors pick up on that fast. Judge Whitmore adjusted her glasses. Objection overruled. A sharp breath moved through the courtroom. Then Vanessa Reed spoke the name clearly for the first time. Claire Bennett. Silence, not confusion, recognition, because several people inside the courtroom reacted instantly, especially Leonard Voss. His face went completely pale. And then, something almost unbelievable happened. He looked at Richard Hale and whispered, You told me she wouldn't come. The courtroom microphones didn't catch it clearly, but nearby reporters did. And within minutes, social media exploded. Who was Claire Bennett? Why was the billionaire terrified of her, and why did the defense think she wouldn't appear? Then the side doors opened. A woman in her early 40s walked into the courtroom wearing a plain gray coat, no makeup, no dramatic entrance. But the moment Leonard Voss saw her, he stopped breathing for half a second. That reaction told the jury more than any opening statement ever could. Claire Bennett walked carefully toward the witness stand. And here's where things became psychologically fascinating. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed, deeply disappointed. That emotion changes everything. Because anger can seem personal, disappointment feels truthful. Vanessa approached softly. Ms. Bennett, could you please tell the court your former occupation? Former occupation, Agon, deliberate wording. Claire took a breath. I was Senior Operations Coordinator for Voss Urban Holdings for 9 years. The courtroom erupted into whispers immediately. Former insider. Those 2 words are devastating in corporate trials because jurors instinctively believe insiders know hidden truths. Vanessa continued carefully. And during your employment, what were your responsibilities? I managed internal communications between development teams, contractors, inspectors, and executive offices. Translation? She knew everything. And Leonard Voss knew it too. You could literally see panic beginning to replace calculation on his face. Richard Hale tried to remain composed, but his hand tightened around his pen so hard it snapped. That tiny detail mattered, because courtroom tension is contagious. When powerful attorneys lose composure, juries notice. Vanessa opened the black folder. Ms. Bennett, did there come a time when the Moreno family bakery became a topic inside the company? Claire looked down briefly, then answered quietly. Yes. What was discussed? The witness hesitated, not theatrically, like someone struggling with guilt. And guilt is persuasive because it feels involuntary. Finally, Claire spoke. Mr. Voss wanted the property before the new development launch. Vanessa nodded slowly. What happened when the Moreno family refused to sell? Claire swallowed hard. And then came the sentence that changed the entire trial. He said, if they wouldn't leave willingly, we would make staying impossible. Complete silence, no whispers, no movement, nothing. Even the reporters stopped typing because everyone understood instantly what that sentence meant. And Leonard Voss? He closed his eyes, just for 1 second. But psychologically, that reaction was catastrophic because innocent people usually react with outrage to false accusations, shock, denial, confusion. But Leonard Voss reacted like a man hearing his worst secret repeated publicly. Vanessa Reed didn't rush. That's another sign of experienced prosecutors. When a powerful moment lands, you let it breathe. After several seconds, she continued. Did Mr. Voss explain what he meant? Claire nodded slowly. He said pressure changes people faster than lawsuits. The jury looked stunned, especially juror number 6, the former small business owner. He stared directly at Leonard Voss with visible disgust. And at that moment, the emotional center of the trial completely shifted. But Vanessa wasn't finished. Not even close. She presented internal company emails, meeting schedules, construction adjustment requests, inspection coordination memos, all connected to the area surrounding the bakery. Individually, harmless, together, disturbing, because patterns create meaning. And Vanessa Reed was building a pattern brick by brick. Then came the most dangerous evidence so far, an internal memo labeled, Hold Out Property Strategy. The phrase alone sounded sinister. Richard Hale objected immediately. Context omission. But Judge Whitmore allowed the document temporarily. Vanessa read one line aloud. Extended environmental pressure may encourage accelerated compliance from remaining occupants. Listen carefully to that language. Corporate language often hides intent behind professionalism. Environmental pressure, accelerated compliance. Those aren't emotional phrases. They're sanitized, cold, which somehow makes them more disturbing. Because jurors begin imagining boardrooms where human suffering becomes strategy. Claire Bennett then revealed something even darker. According to her testimony, several executives inside the company privately referred to resistant business owners as legacy obstacles. Not people, obstacles. That dehumanization matters psychologically. Because once organizations stop viewing people as human beings, ethical boundaries disappear frighteningly fast. Vanessa approached the witness stand carefully. Ms. Bennett, why did you leave the company? Claire looked toward Leonard Voss for the first time. And honestly, the hatred in his eyes shocked people watching, not anger, hatred, the kind powerful people show when someone breaks loyalty. Claire's voice trembled slightly, because I realized what we were doing. Vanessa paused. What were you doing? Claire answered quietly. Destroying people without technically breaking laws. And there it was, the entire prosecution theory in one sentence. The courtroom exploded into noise. Reporters rushed for exits to send updates. The judge slammed her gavel repeatedly. Order! Order! Meanwhile, Leonard Voss leaned toward Richard Hale and whispered something furiously. Hale looked alarmed. Actually alarmed. Then he stood abruptly. Your Honor, the defense requests immediate recess. Too fast, too emotional, and that was a mistake, because sudden desperation makes jurors suspicious. Judge Whitmore narrowed her eyes. On what grounds? Hale hesitated, just briefly. But brief hesitation under pressure can destroy authority. Then he answered, newly discovered concerns regarding witness credibility. Vanessa Reed smiled for the first time in the entire trial. Not a happy smile, a dangerous one, because she already knew what Hale was about to say, and apparently, she had prepared for it. Your Honor, Vanessa said calmly, if the defense intends to accuse Ms. Bennett of misconduct, she opened another folder. The prosecution requests permission to introduce Exhibit 47. Richard Hale's expression changed instantly, panic, pure panic. And when Leonard Voss saw the exhibit number, he nearly knocked over his chair standing up. The entire courtroom froze, because whatever Exhibit 47 was, Billionaire clearly feared it more than Claire Bennett herself.